Hello and welcome to podcast episode 4 of Jono Speaks F1. It was a dream win for Ferrari this weekend. It was quite an eventful weekend without any crashes for a change. No safety cars. Maybe it was a good job we didn't see any safety cars as well after we saw the practice session. I don't actually know the results of that. Did we get any results back? Was it a brake failure like we thought it might be? For those unaware, in the practice session, or before the practice session, sorry, when the safety car does its allotted time of scouting out the track and seeing if it's fine to race on, it looked like it had a brake failure as it came to brake into the first corner, I think it was. It just went off and hit the barriers. I don't remember any time that's happened in F1. We've had a Formula 1 car crash into the safety car, but not a safety car crashing of its own accord. It's not like NASCAR, where the owner tries to prove himself and crashes into barriers. Or, excuse me. Anyway, moving on. It was a dream win for Ferrari this weekend. For a change, their strategist pulling it out of the bag and sealing a win. They made the one-stop work where everybody else had to do a two-stop. It was quite nice to see for a change. But let's take it away from the race start, where yet again it's Lando losing pole position on the first lap of the race. You could argue it wasn't entirely much you could do about it, but it was a rather audacious move by Piastri catching him off guard. And it could have been a very bad ending for McLaren on the first lap. The move itself in its entirety proves that Piastri is out for himself in McLaren. He doesn't care that Lando is in contention for the world title. It's McLaren's best shot. Lando's in front with the points, and it's going to end in tears soon if they don't bring some team orders in to rein this in a little bit. Piastri's obviously trying to prove himself, not just to the team or anything like that, but he's trying to prove himself in the sense that he's not there to be in Lando's shadow. And it must be frustrating for Lando because obviously logic tells you you're in the lead for the points, so you would expect the team to be backing you up and obviously taking the steps to back you in chasing down Max for the points. It is still very doable. Lando can still definitely win the championship, but each little time that something like this happens eats away at those chances, and we've seen it before. We've seen it where points here and there, 1 point has won or lost a championship. Felipe Massa knows everything about that. Lewis Hamilton knows about that. We've seen it time and time again. And if it comes down to 1 point that Lando needs this weekend, weekends before, could easily have been those. So McLaren need to decide quick who their... Well, they already know who their main driver is, but they need to stop the fighting. Pit stops prove critical in this race. Also, Lando narrowly avoiding a drive-through penalty, just managing to get his McLaren slowed down enough for the pit lane restrictions, the speed limiter. He almost took the sign out of him as well. A lot of people saw this as quite a reckless move. I don't really think it's reckless. I want drivers to be doing this. He's obviously trying to scrub every second that he can out of that. And that's perfect. It's what you want your drivers to do. You want to be saving seconds where you can, because on track every second counts. It's the difference between coming out in front of someone or coming out side by side or behind them. So I don't really think it was reckless, but every driver aims to cut down the seconds in that braking zone. So I think it looked more hectic than it was. The undercut was especially crucial at this race. Lewis and Mercedes made this work for them. Lewis had a great start as well, managing to make positions at the start of the race, put him in a great position for the rest of the Grand Prix. But it put him in a great position that the Mercedes could obtain. I don't think the Mercedes was not only quick enough, but anywhere near being able to get any further than what Lewis managed this weekend. It was very much damage limitation in a sense. Not quite as much damage limitation as Red Bull, but it was very much damage limitation for Mercedes. Lewis managed to make the best out of a bad qualifying session, which he was extremely angry with himself for. And this is where the difference between Max and Lewis lies. Max doesn't get first, he's not bothered. Lewis doesn't get it when he feels like he could. I mean, Q2 proved that he might have been able to get pole position, and he was extremely angry with himself and claiming that maybe it's a good job he's leaving Mercedes because Antonelli can make up for the mistakes that he makes, which I think is very harsh on yourself. He's 7, some people argue 8-time world champion. I argue that as well, to be fair. And arguably the best the sport has ever seen. And when he doesn't qualify first and he's claiming that arguably a rookie coming into the team, who on his first outing for the team crashed a car, he's arguing that Antonelli will do better for the team than him. That shows you the passion and how hard he is still on himself to do better, which tells you that he's not leaving the sport for a while yet. We know he's signed a multi-year contract for Ferrari, but it tells you everything you need to know about a champion's mindset. The subject of Ferrari, their pit stops were the pinnacle for the race for them. The strategists nailed it on the head this weekend with the one stop. They made it work, and it was the time that they pit that made it work. It was very different for Red Bull. We saw this weekend not only struggling with the car on track, but now the kinks in the arm are starting to show in the pit lane as well. A couple of bad stops. It wasn't really anything mechanical holding them back, but they just couldn't get the wheel off. It cost them a crucial amount of time. They went for a very interesting strategy early on that looked like they may be onto something, with everyone putting the medium tyres, pitting and getting rid of the medium tyres earlier than expected. We all thought that Red Bull put it out of the bag starting on the hard tyres, but they couldn't get the hard tyres to last. They couldn't capitalise on the strategy enough. They had to put a new set of hard tyres on, which ultimately was the undoing of that strategy. They could have done with making those hard tyres last a lot longer and then switching to the mediums to go faster at the end of the race, but they couldn't get the medium tyres to turn on once they'd swapped over and began losing even more time. So the 2-stop didn't work for them at all this weekend. I think that car for them this weekend just didn't work at all. Ferrari nailed it. They got the mediums on first, took advantage of the track rubbering up later on, just swapped to the hards, keeping a decent amount of pace, which allowed them to keep Charles in front. I think taking those mediums as far as they did and then swapping to the hard tyres, even though it was a big ask, that was the way to go. I think if all the teams would have done it, it wouldn't have turned out the same way. It was the way to go for them because McLaren opted to do a two stops, and so did the rest of the field pretty much, apart from maybe one or two others. If everybody else had chosen to do it, Ferrari maybe looking third or fourth. But it definitely caught McLaren off guard, shook them into shape a little bit, and left them chasing. If you could argue if Piastri hadn't made that overtake on lap 1, that very brash and audacious move, Piastri would have been in second instead of forcing Lando down to third, and it wouldn't have allowed Ferrari that chance. But that's always the ifs and buts of the weekend after, isn't it? The Monday after, it's very easy to say if this and that happened. But Ferrari strategists were the changing point for the race. Charles Leclerc did well to make those tyres last till the end of the race. It's a shame we couldn't get a Ferrari 1-2, but I don't think the Tifosi are too bothered about that. It made front page headlines, front page headlines in the Italian newspapers on Monday morning. And there was parades in the street. It was a very well won race. Deserved race on the strategy side. Yeah, I'd say it's fair to say it's a very well deserved race. They definitely made that race themselves. The McLaren team radio, yet again, some strange calls over the radio this weekend. I get this strong impression, but whenever the race engineers talk to their drivers, I feel like they've been given the go-ahead by their management first. I feel like they have to run everything by the bosses first before they then speak to the drivers. I think there was a lengthy discussion about Piastri's overtake on Norris during the race, and then a discussion on what to do from there on. We later on heard that papaya rules and you are clear to fight. I think papaya rules is basically just bring the cars home, do not crash. But it's the wrong end of the season saying you're allowed to fight. If it was 4 races into the year, great, let them have at it. And it's not. I sound like a broken record, but Lando is the closest contender to Max, and every point counts. This is the time when you need the bosses to be saying, look, keep it clean on first lap. No stupid overtakes. If you're in second, then you need to hold the Ferraris back, or the Mercedes, or the Red Bull back. Keep throwing away points like this carelessly, and there's some fantasy you can keep both drivers happy in the sport. It's just not going to go well. Yes, they're a team, but only one person can win the championship. And I think if Lando wants to become a champion, he's going to have to develop a backbone and start ignoring team radios, start defending harder, start prioritising himself and fixate on the championship. Otherwise, he's not going to win the title. And both drivers will lose out. Piastri's trying to prove himself as the number 1 driver, and that's fine. That's what you want to do in the pivotal part of the season. It's not the time to do it though. He needs to play the team game, and just like Checo has and like Bottas has over the years, help McLaren steal the Constructors' title and help Lando get as many points as possible. If Piastri keeps swallowing up points like this, the best they're going to do is second or third because he's swallowing up points that are needed. If it was the other way around though, I'd be saying the same to Piastri. Lando would need to be teammates with Piastri. But he hasn't done enough earlier in the season to make sure of that. If it had done more in the early parts of the season to cement second place and be with a chance to catch Max, then I'd be saying that all day long. But he's not put himself in that situation. Lando has. And I feel like Lando should be getting the support from the team. Recent news on in the paddock suggests that McLaren are reviewing the aggressive nature of Piastri's overtake on Norris. I don't think it will change anything on track from Piastri's perspective. I think he will still be just as keen to prove himself. The feeling I got after the race in the cool-down room and on the podium is that Lando is slightly annoyed and thinks he deserves more support, whereas Piastri is very much the kind of Vettel and Webber sort of feeling within the team. Vettel was trying to prove himself, but the difference was he ignored team orders directly. Red Bull knew the situation and gave the team orders and told him to stay at put. Vettel ignored that. And I think Lando needs to take a leaf out of Vettel's book. He's not going to get the championship if this keeps happening, because like I say, Piastri's going to swallow up more points that are needed. Speaking of team issues, we're starting to see Red Bull complaining a lot more, starting to see the Red Bull of old again. If you think back to 2021, every time a little thing happened, they were on the phone to Michael Massey. We're starting to see that again. Just like at the start of the race on the team radio, can't remember if it was Max or Checo now, but they were complaining Lewis didn't leave a car's width. This was apparently at the race start as they got through the chicane, the newly built chicane. I've seen multiple replays of this and I haven't seen any instance of either Mercedes getting in the way of the Red Bulls, so I've no clue what that radio message refers to. But from what I can see, there was no infringement. There was no call for that. I think it was Perez, if I remember rightly, but yeah. But cut to a chunk of laps later in the race, and we get a very late move from Checo in the braking area, and also a moment where he squeezes the Mercedes as George Russell wide off the track. So for me, you can't be sat on the team radio crying to the FIA when you're more than prepared to do the same a few laps later. The feeling I get from Checo is we're seeing a very stressed and frustrated Perez at the moment. The side of someone who feels maybe their career is under threat. I think many more mistakes, or if he fails to finish up the field where Red Bull wanted him to, we could be seeing a new teammate for Max soon. You'll remember, the Constructors' title is Red Bull's main focus now. They know the World Drivers' title is at stake, and I feel they've pretty much given up on that. You can tell that because the performance of Perez's car has suddenly come back to them. Both Red Bulls are now finishing sort of the same place now. So the constructors' title is where their main focus lies now. So if Perez fails to help seal that for them, we could be seeing a new teammate. And this could be in qualifying. He needs to qualify up there. He needs to be getting into Q3. He can't be getting kicked out of Q3 all the time. He can't be getting kicked out of Q2. He needs to perform in the races. Red Bull is a top team. I do believe he's not had the car previously, but excuse me, he needs to now perform because what the team wants takes over driver priority now. We've seen it before as well. We've seen it this weekend. Teammates being replaced. Franco Colapinto has been introduced to Williams. I'm surprised we haven't seen a replacement already. Red Bull are infamous for replacing drivers left, right, and centre, but time will tell. Speaking of Max, we see a resigned and rather, for want of a better word, bummed out Max Verstappen at the moment. I think it's because the car is nowhere near competitive enough anymore to be challenging for the race. And they know that. We saw an article saying Red Bull don't have enough budget in the cost cap to upgrade the car now due to Perez's crashes. Now, for me, this is fake news. I think this is just one of them headlines to grab attention. I don't know where it's come from, but I think it's total rubbish. Perez hasn't had that many dramas. It doesn't quite work like that at this point in the season. Upgrades are planned months in advance, and it's not just something that the team decide, oh yeah, we'll go from here today. We'll just create a new front wing for next week. It's not like that. They plan months in advance. They research data on where the car's terrible and stuff like that, and then they start designing a new front wing if it's a front wing they need. And it takes months of preparation. I think it's total rubbish. Perez has not cost them. If they don't have any more upgrades coming this season, they're working on next year's car in the hope to be competitive. Because Adrian Newey's leaving, don't forget. So, for me, them confirming that the no more upgrades are coming this year means they've already started on next year's car. And it might be what I said a couple of times in the previous podcast where Adrian Newey leaving has sparked them to move on to upgrading next year's car earlier than they would have liked. So let's also look at, on the other side of things, Logan Sargent, plenty of mishaps Williams, let's say. And they're not saying things like that as well. So I think that is just a bit of a fake news headline. The only thing now with F1 taking a more front row in the spotlight for a lot more fans, there's a lot more fake news coming out, unfortunately. But speaking of upgrades too, we saw an extreme version of their rear wing this weekend, which to me was clutching at straws to try and get a bit more pace out of that car. I'm not sure how that rear wing was legal, but yeah, I feel it was a desperate attempt to get some more straight line speed out of that car for this weekend, which was surprising. I didn't think straight line speed was a worry for them, but it didn't make a difference for them, really, did it? They seemed, at best, I mean, they're slower than Mercedes now. Mercedes didn't have a great weekend, but McLaren's and Ferrari's recent upgrades means that Mercedes are a third fastest team at best now, which Red Bull are fourth fastest team at best after this weekend's performance. We're seeing them go backwards more and more at the moment. And who knows, it could be they could be slower than we thought because they were using the asymmetric braking system. They are now very far off the pace. A completely different car, than what we saw before the summer break. We were seeing finishing 15 to 25 seconds ahead each race, and now they are pretty much that sort of difference away from the top. And you don't just kind of lose that speed from one race not suiting your car. We've seen this from the summer break now. It's been 2 or 3 races after, and the car is miles off what it used to be. I think we can pretty much confirm they were using asymmetric braking. Which will be a bit annoying, because things like that, if it's been banned because it's considered gaining an unfair advantage, how many races they've won from gaining an unfair advantage then? but we will never know. It's that's a whole new argument as well. There's a lot of conspiracies between Red Bull and the FIA, so that's a whole different ballgame. On the other side of things, Williams and Haas had a great result for the weekend. I said in the previous podcast I thought these two would have a good weekend. They're very good when it comes to straight line speed, and that track suits them perfectly. It was a little more eventful for Haas than it was for Williams, with K-Mag receiving a race ban for his lunge on Pierre Gasly. That's been confirmed now as well. The next race in 2 weeks' time, just less than 2 weeks' time now, he will be banned for that. So Ollie Bear sees a return to the seat for Haas, the Ferrari reserve driver, Oliver Behrman. We'll see how he does. It must be a bit nervous for the drivers when reserve drivers come in. So obviously he's banned, and it was not a decision from him. But if it was me, I'd be like, I hope he doesn't do better than me now, because if he races better than me and gets a better position and points for the team, does that mean I can kiss my seat goodbye? That would always be on my mind if I was banned for a race or the reserve driver was taking my seat. But it was an ambitious overtake from K-Mag. But I love the way Haas have been this year, not afraid to get their hands dirty. We've seen them playing a great team game, not scared to be a nuisance on track. We've seen them getting penalties on purpose just to protect the other driver's position on track. And I love it. For me, that's a different side of Formula One that we've not seen for a while. And a team that's lower down the rankings like that is good to see, because it shows they realise how important the championship points are to be able to get in more money next season, to be able to develop a better car. And two personalities that go great together as well, Nico Rosberg and K-Mag. The way they've been this year is great for that team. So I know they're getting on a little bit now, and it seems a little bit cheeky way of putting that, but I hope we see them in the sport for a bit longer. Just like I hope Danny Rick is in the sport for longer. It was Franco Colapinto's first race also in an F1 car this weekend, and he showed strong potential. He made a nice overtake. You could argue it was a basic overtake, but don't underestimate how tricky those overtakes can be. It wasn't a most action-packed or thrilling race for him, but it was exactly what you need for your first race. Get your feet in, get a good amount of laps under your belt, some decent overtaking, experience of what it's like. I mean, he's a seasoned F2 driver. He's no stranger to it, but he had a solid first race. He did well. And it was nice to see. And there was no crashes, no lockups from what I saw. His pit stop was good. It was all good. So it was very promising. He got off the grid to start, no issues as well. That was good. Lando Norris proven that sometimes the starts can be a little more difficult than you see. Like I say though, it's not unusual to him. He's a seasoned F2 driver, but I think you could argue you could times it by 10 when you move into F1 with all the G-forces hitting you. I think we'll see a lot more from him in the coming races though. Baku will be a test for him, because that's the next street circuit. Very close sections. Walls are the limit. There's no white line, it's just walls. So that could be the real test. Albon delivering it again for Williams though. He finished 9th and Franco finished 12th. So that's a great result for Williams. They got 2 points in 9th. This is miles better for the team. Sargent, he's been nowhere near for the team really though, has he? So Franco Colapinto has done miles better than Sargent has already. James Fowlers at the end of the race congratulated Franco, saying it's a fantastic race, didn't put a foot wrong, reflect on this weekend, and he can't wait to see how they will build together. So it's a great weekend for him. And it's good that he has the confidence of the boss behind him. So, like I say, crucial points, and the Haas finishing in the top 10 as well. Which is a shame for the race ban. I'm glad that race bans don't incur penalties in constructors' points, because if it did, that would be a real shame that they missed out. So it's good that Has no effect on the constructors' standings. But back to Ferrari. What a race to win. We thought they might take a new power unit, didn't we? I said that in a previous podcast that a new power unit might be in store for them. And that's exactly what happened. And it makes sense. Home race, you want to win it. So it did tremendously well there. The strategist nailing it. Lando Norris got the fastest lap. He stole it away from Max Verstappen at the end. Also, Lewis Hamilton almost got the fastest lap on the last lap of the race. The fastest was a 1:21.4, 3-2, and Lewis put in a 1:21.5, at the end of the race. So he almost got it on the last lap. And Verstappen, with his previous attempts, was 2 tenths slower than them both. So McLaren and Mercedes proving they still had time in the bag in case the Red Bull was to somehow find an attack. But I don't know. What do we think? Do Ferrari have a chance at being in the title hunt still? I think it's a little bit of a, how you say, long shot. I don't know why that word wasn't coming to me then. So Lando Norris is closest with 241 points to Verstappen, and Leclerc is the next in third with 217 points. Lando is the closest driver, but I think it's a long shot to say Charles Leclerc has a chance. We don't have that many races left now, and if it is, it's going to come down to the wire. That's like last race of the season kind of stuff. And this is the other thing where it's annoying that McLaren aren't prioritising Lando. Oscar is fourth in contention with 197 points. Max has 303. Lando Norris has 241. They need to be backing Norris as soon as possible. It's very frustrating. I don't understand why they're too afraid to put their foot down and back Norris. Norris went on to say we could have easily crashed, and I agree with him. That first corner overtake was brash. It was the sort of overtake we saw a young Lewis Hamilton do in the days that he was trying to reprove himself. And it wasn't necessary. I think Piastri's best chance this season is a second place in the Drivers' Championship. But yeah, I think the sooner McLaren sort out their team, the better, because otherwise we're going to see some crashes soon. And if we see them both coming together, then Max is going to run away with the championship. And even though he's not got a competitive car now, it could still seal it in the championship because they can't sort out their differences and sort their drivers out. Perez finished 8th this race. Still cementing their lead in the Constructors' Championship by 8 points from McLaren, but there is still 8 races to go, so I think we can pretty much confirm that McLaren are probably going to win the Constructors' title this year. It's more the Drivers' title they need to sort out now. As soon as that's sorted, then we can actually focus on someone being the actual true contender for the championship. But until then, I can see Max running away with it if they keep tripping over each other. I am surprised that McLaren didn't have the pace toward the end of the race. Piastri's overtake was a big hindrance. It left Norris playing catch up for the rest of the race, as he couldn't then get back to help battle at the top. With 62 points left between Lando and Verstappen, he still has every opportunity to catch him and overtake him in the championship, but it's going to come down to every race counting. So we will see. In other news, just before the weekend, there was a report saying Renault staff to protest Alpine plans to ditch the 2026 engine. They're responsible for the engines used by Alpine. But Alpine want to switch suppliers. They are owned by Renault, and they're apparently on the brink of a deal to become a new Mercedes customer when the new engine regulations come into the sport in 2026. And you can see why, because Alpine are not doing great this season. They are blaming a lot of it on the power unit. That could be a big blow for the Renault supplier, though. In a statement, though, they were saying a vast majority of employees would refuse to work on Friday and that a group would travel to Monza to protest in the grandstands of the Italian circuit during the opening practice sessions. I mean, it sent an aggressive message, but do Alpine really want to carry on with French engines in F1? They're not doing great. They're 8th in the Constructors' Championship, and it's well beyond its halfway point. The engine issues played a part in it, with, well, adding to their huge disappointment. I wouldn't be surprised if Alpine just kind of ignore that and swap to Mercedes anyway. We've seen the Mercedes power unit be very consistent and be very reliable, something which the Renault is not. I didn't see any of it on the TV, so from what I gather, it was a peaceful protest, and I think it would be. I think it would be very professional about it. But Alpine is saying no decision has been made yet, but they are looking at switching to Mercedes. If that is the case, I think Alpine will be right back up there, because the power unit has been one of the main issues for them this year. And it's great that Haas had a good weekend as well after the troubles they had last weekend with the debt collectors and the trucks leaving a day later than everybody else. It didn't faze them at all. So it was nice to see them still finishing in a great place. Going back to the Red Bull rear wing, I'm still surprised that that wasn't investigated. There is also rumours that, as of yesterday, Red Bull have made an inquiry to the FIA to investigate McLaren and Mercedes' front wing, which is very interesting. Like I said before, it's very much the Red Bull of the 2021 era when they weren't winning everything anymore. As soon as something doesn't go their way, they seem to start complaining a lot more. And I don't understand what they want an investigation over, because the front wings are very limited to what you can do now. And if anything, you would see most of it on the TV screens, because they're all very much standard. There's not much you can do with the front wings anymore. The old aero regulations had a lot more freedom. But yeah, that's this weekend in a nutshell, really. Like I say, it was an eventful race, but more and so that there was no crashes. It was eventful in the sense that a lot more was happening on track, which was nice to see. It was great that we actually had a race as well, and it was won by wit. It was won by strategists playing a great part. Even Leclerc didn't understand the strategy. You heard him complain when he was brought into pit. I don't think he even knew he could have a chance of winning. We saw people dropping the ball like Red Bull with some horrible pit stops. We saw some great racing from Lewis at the start to make up some places. Some great overtaking down the field. And a very clean race for a change. Up next is Azerbaijan. And I'm going to do a separate podcast for that in a week's time, so that it breaks it up a little bit. You've got another podcast before then as well. And then we have another race straight after. And I think it's 2 weeks or maybe 3 week break after that for the United States Grand Prix. And we are flying through these races. It won't be long until we're at Abu Dhabi. Going forward, though, I feel McLaren could throw this all away still. If they don't sort out those team issues soon, we could see Max Verstappen still winning a Drivers' Championship. The Constructors' Championship is not theirs anymore. McLaren are way too close, and all they need to do is just stay consistent. And even with a couple of crashes, if it takes both cars out, McLaren still have that in the bag. They're 8 points behind, so that's just one Red Bull not finishing in the points and both McLarens, or no Red Bull finishing in the points. And I think with how things are going recently, Red Bull need to be looking behind them more than they're looking in front of them. Especially with Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll and the Aston Martin doing better recently. Who is not the best track for Williams and Haas, so I don't think we will see much from them. But on the other hand, going back to this weekend, RB had a very good weekend, better than what they've had previously, with Yuki and Danny Rick finishing in 12th and 13th. So that was nice to see. Oh no, sorry. Ignore me, I'm getting mixed up. That's not what happened at all. Yeah. Ricciardo finished in 13th and Tsunoda DNF'd after the unlucky shunt into the side, where they suspect it was radiator damage. I do apologise, I was getting mixed up between the results of the World Championship standings there. But it was definitely a good weekend for Ricciardo. Just a shame it wasn't a good weekend for Yuki. But that'll about do it for this episode. Like I say, there'll be another one next week to introduce a preview for Baku's race. And then we will look forward to that and discuss any gossip further on from there. Take care.